The day begins on a perfectly ordinary London street, under a sky the color of a dusty pigeon's wing. The air is damp, carrying the familiar city scents of wet pavement, exhaust fumes, and roasting nuts from a nearby cart. People hurry past, their faces tucked into collars, their minds on deadlines and train schedules. They are utterly oblivious to your mission, to the fact that you are standing on the precipice of a different world entirely. Your destination, the day begins on a perfectly ordinary London street, under a sky the color of a dusty pigeon's wing. The air is damp, carrying the familiar city scents of wet pavement, exhaust fumes, and roasting nuts from a nearby cart. People hurry past, their faces tucked into collars, their minds on deadlines and train schedules. They are utterly oblivious to your mission, to the fact that you are standing on the precipice of a different world entirely. Your destination is not a shop or an office, but a relic, a splash of defiant red against the city's gray backdrop, a telephone box. It looks out of place, like a misplaced toy from a giant's nursery. The paint is a little chipped, the glass panes slightly grimy. To the rushing crowds, it is an obsolete curiosity, an artifact of a time before mobile phones. To you, it is a gateway. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs, a wild rhythm against the steady beat of the city. You've read about this. Of course, you've heard the stories. But hearing about a magical doorway and actually preparing to step through one are two vastly different things. Taking a deep, steadying breath that does little to calm the swarm of butterflies in your stomach. You pull open the heavy door. You step inside. And the world changes. The roar of the traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, the entire bustling symphony of London is instantly muffled, replaced by a strange, humming silence. The door closes behind you with a solid, definitive thud, sealing you in. The space is cramped and smells faintly of old metal and something else, something sharp and electric, like the air after a lightning strike. Before you is the telephone itself, a heavy black receiver resting in its cradle, and a rotary dial with a satisfyingly solid feel. This is the lock. This is the key. Your instructions, repeated to you 3 times by a very stern-looking witch from the Department of Magical Transportation, echo in your mind. You lift the receiver, the cool, heavy plastic, unfamiliar in your hand. There is no dial tone. There is only a waiting, expectant silence. Your fingers, trembling slightly, Find the holes in the rotary dial. You begin to dial the numbers, each one a separate, deliberate act. 6. The dial whirs back into place with a sound like a clockwork insect. 2. Another whir. 4, 4, 2, MAGIC. With the last number, a soft click echoes in the tiny space, and a voice speaks in your ear. It's a woman's voice, impossibly calm and cool, as smooth and polished as the floor you are about to see. Welcome to the Ministry of Magic, the voice says, without any preamble. Please state your name and business. You swallow, your throat suddenly dry. You give your name, your voice sounding small and foreign in the enclosed space. I'm here for a tour, an introductory visit. There is a moment of silence. You imagine your name being checked against a great, enchanted list somewhere deep in the earth beneath you. You picture magical quills scratching and glowing runes shifting. Thank you, the cool voice says finally. Visitor, please take the badge that will be dispensed from the coin return slot. You look down. With a loud, mechanical clunk, a small, round, brass badge drops into the metal dish. You pick it up. It's heavy and cool to the touch. The word visitor is etched across its surface. Below a finely detailed engraving of the ministry's coat of arms. Please affix your badge to the front of your robes and hold on, the voice instructs. Before you can even properly fasten the badge to your chest, it happens. It's not a lurch or a jolt. It is a smooth, seamless, and utterly disorienting sensation of descent. The entire telephone box, your tiny red island of reality, begins to sink. You look out through the grimy glass, and the London street, the gray pavement, the rushing feet, the legs of an indifferent pigeon, rises past you. The box is being swallowed by the ground, the pavement sealing itself over your head with no sound and no seam, leaving nothing but an ordinary patch of sidewalk where a telephone box stood just a moment before. For a second, there is absolute darkness, a thick, subterranean black that presses in on all sides. Then, the glass panes of the box begin to glow with a soft, internal light, illuminating your strange, vertical journey. You are moving down, fast. The walls of the shaft are a blur of ancient, mossy brickwork, thickets of tangled pipes that hum with unseen energies, and flashes of what looks like solid, gnarled rock. as if you are plunging through the very bones of the earth. The air in the box shivers, and the temperature drops. The sound is a low, powerful rumble, the sound of a world reconfiguring itself around you. The descent feels like it lasts for an eternity, and no time at all. You grip the sides of the box, your knuckles white, your eyes wide as you watch the deep history of the city flash past. You feel a strange of displacement, of being neither here nor there, a traveler between worlds. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the rumbling softens, and the speed of your descent slows. The blur of brick and pipe gives way to something else. A new light, bright and golden, begins to bloom below you. You press your face to the glass, peering down, and your breath catches in your throat. It's the atrium. You are looking down into a hall so vast, so impossibly grand, that your mind struggles to comprehend its scale. The floor is made of a dark, polished wood, so glossy it reflects the light like a black, motionless lake. The ceiling is so high you can't even see it. It just fades into a hazy, peacock blue expanse. And the light, the glorious golden light, is coming from a massive, ornate fountain in the center of the hall. A group of golden statues stands in the middle of the fountain. A handsome wizard, a beautiful witch, a centaur, a goblin, and a house elf, all gazing up in admiration at something you can't yet see. The telephone box comes to a gentle, perfect stop. For a moment, you are suspended, a specimen in a glass case, looking out at this impossible, intimidating space. Then, with a soft ding, the door swings open, and the sounds and smells of the ministry rush in to greet you. The air is different here, clean, dry, and smelling faintly of parchment, magic, and ambition. The sound is a low, echoing murmur, a symphony of important footsteps on polished wood, the distant rustle of 1,000 memos, and the low, continuous roar of dozens of fireplaces lining the walls, their flames a brilliant emerald green. You take one hesitant step out of the telephone box and onto the polished floor. Your visitor badge gives a faint, warm pulse against your chest. You have arrived. Stepping out of the telephone box is like stepping from a quiet cupboard into the middle of a grand cathedral during high mass. The sheer scale of the atrium is the first thing that hits you, a physical blow to your senses. It's a space designed to impress, to intimidate, to make you feel small and insignificant in the face of the vast, monolithic power of the Ministry of Magic. And it works. Your neck cranes back instinctively, trying to find the ceiling, but it remains a distant, peacock blue haze, so high above that tiny, enchanted paper airplanes, interdepartmental memos, you realize, flit about like distant birds. The floor is a vast, unbroken expanse of gleaming dark wood, polished to such a high sheen that it perfectly reflects the blue of the ceiling and the golden light of the fountain, creating the disorienting illusion that you are walking on a dark, bottomless lake beneath a twilight sky. Your own reflection stares up at you, a small, wide-eyed figure in a world of giants. The acoustics of the hall are strange and echoing. Every footstep, every cough, every rustle of a robe is amplified, bouncing off the distant walls to create a constant, low murmur of activity, the sound of 1,000 important things happening all at once. Lining both sides of the long hall are dozens of gilded fireplaces. Every few seconds, one of them roars to life with a great whoosh of emerald green flame, and a witch or wizard will step out, brushing soot from their shoulders with a practiced air of nonchalance before striding purposefully into the throng. It's the Floo network, the main artery of the ministry, and watching it in action is like seeing a living, breathing circulatory system at work. People appear and disappear in flashes of green fire, their movements brisk and efficient, their faces set with the grim determination of people with far too much to do. But the true heart of the atrium, the source of its golden light, and its overwhelming sense of grandeur, is the fountain of magical brethren. It's much larger than it looked from above, a towering edifice of gleaming gold that dominates the center of the hall. Water shoots from the tips of the sculpted wands, from the centaur's arrow, and from the goblin's fingertips, arcing through the air in glittering, impossible shapes before splashing down into the pool below. The sound of the water is a constant, pleasant burble, a counterpoint to the sharp whoosh of the fireplaces and the echoing footsteps, the golden figures, the wizard, the witch, the centaur, the goblin, and the house elf are not just statues. You realize with a jolt that their eyes, made of chips of precious gems, seem to follow the crowds, their expressions of noble admiration never wavering. It's both inspiring and deeply unsettling. You try your best to look like you belong here, to stride forward with purpose as if you have an urgent appointment in the department of magical accidents and catastrophes. But it's impossible. You can't help but stare, and you notice, with a small sense of relief, that you're not the only one. Other visitors, identifiable by their own glowing brass badges, are doing the exact same thing. Their heads swiveling, their mouths slightly agape. Even some of the ministry employees, the ones who look like they've just arrived for the day, pause for a moment to take in the grandeur before being swallowed by the currents of the crowd. The people are a spectacle in themselves. There are stern-faced aurors in heavy, dark robes, moving in tight, disciplined groups, their eyes constantly scanning the hall. There are harried-looking wizards in mismatched tweed, clutching teetering piles of parchment that threaten to spill with every step. There are elegant witches in robes of the latest fashion, their heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. You see a goblin in a pin-striped suit having a heated discussion with a tall, thin wizard. Their voices too low to hear, but their frantic gestures telling a story of financial disagreement. A tiny, ancient-looking house elf scurries past, pushing a trolley laden with clinking potions vials, making itself as small and invisible as possible. You feel a profound sense of being an outsider, a tourist in a land of kings. Everyone here seems to have a purpose, a destination, a role to play in the great, complex machinery of the wizarding world's governance. You are just an observer, a ghost at the feast. You take a step and nearly trip over your own feet on the ridiculously polished floor, earning a brief, irritated glance from a passing wizard. Your visitor badge, you notice, has begun to glow with a faint, embarrassed-looking pink light. You quickly try to compose yourself, forcing your gaze forward, away from the distracting spectacle of the fountain and the fireplaces. You have a destination, the security desk, and you have a feeling it's going to be just as intimidating as the hall you're currently trying to navigate. As you approach, you can see the process in action, and it does little to calm your nerves. A nervous-looking wizard in front of you is currently being grilled. He places his wand, a knobbly, light-colored wood, onto a set of ornate brass scales on the desk. The scales glow with a soft, analytical blue light. 12¼ inches, willow, core of unicorn hair. The granite-faced security wizard, whose nameplate reads Eric Munch, drones in a monotone voice, his eyes fixed on the scales. A bit bendy? Been practicing any unauthorized blasting curses lately. Mr. Weasley? The wizard, who you now recognize as one of the red-headed Weasleys, though you're not sure which one, stammers, "No, of course not. Just a bit of enthusiastic denoming." Munch grunts, an unimpressed sound, before stamping a piece of parchment and waving him through. "On your way." Your turn. Your heart does a little nervous flutter. You step up to the desk, the polished mahogany cool beneath your fingertips. "Visitor," Munch says, his eyes flicking down to your glowing badge before meeting yours. His gaze is heavy, probing, as if he's trying to read the last 5 spells you cast directly from your mind. Wand. It's not a request. It's a command. You fumble for your wand, your trusted, familiar companion. It feels strange to hand it over. It's like giving a piece of your own soul to a stranger for inspection. You place it carefully on the brass scales. The instrument hums to life, bathing your wand in the same analytical blue light. Munch says, and the single sound sends a shiver of anxiety down your spine. He squints at the scales. A fine piece of wood, sturdy core. What was your business here again? A tour, you repeat, your voice sounding thinner than you'd like. An introductory visit. An introductory visit, he echoes, his tone suggesting he finds the very idea absurd. He leans forward, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial grumble. You're not here to file a complaint about a mischarmed lawnmower, are you? We had 3 of those yesterday, all from the same street. Sounds like a prank to me. He eyes you suspiciously, as if you might be the mastermind behind a suburban reign of enchanted gardening equipment terror. No, sir, you say quickly. Just a tour. He straightens up, seeming to lose interest. Right. Then he picks up a small, square device with a lens on one side, a magical camera of some sort, and points it at you. Look here. There is a soft flash of purple light that makes you blink. A moment later, a small, laminated card dispenses from a slot in the side of his desk. It's your ID badge. It shows the slightly startled-looking picture the camera just took, along with your name and, in large, clear letters, the word visitor. This badge is magically enchanted, Munch recites, his voice a bored monotone, as if he's said these words 1,000,000 times. It will grant you access only to the levels specified by your tour guide. It will also monitor your emotional state for security purposes. Any extreme emotional flares, panic, aggression, unwarranted euphoria will be noted. He gives you a look that suggests he finds any and all euphoria unwarranted. Keep it visible at all times. Lose it, and you'll have to fill out Form AF73B in triplicate. And believe me, you don't want to do that. You take the badge, your hand slightly shaky. As your fingers touch it, the brass badge already pinned to your chest gives a final, warm pulse, and then goes dormant. You clip the new, laminated ID to your robes. You watch as the background of the badge, behind your picture, shimmers and settles into a placid, neutral beige. You feel a surge of relief that it isn't the panicked pink it was moments ago. Right, Munch says, gesturing with his thumb towards the far end of the hall. Lifts are that way. Try not to touch anything, and no funny business. With that, you are dismissed. You snatch your wand from the scales, grateful to have it back in your possession, and hurry away from the desk, not wanting to give him any reason to call you back. You are officially inside. You have been weighed, measured, and warned. And you can't help but feel that the adventure and the bureaucracy has only just begun. Following Munch's dismissive gesture, you make your way towards the far end of the atrium, where a series of ornate, gilded grills mark the entrances to the lifts. Unlike the silent, intimidating grandeur of the main hall, this area is a hub of chaotic activity. Witches and wizards rush back and forth, their arms laden with files, and their faces etched with a kind of perpetual, low-grade urgency. The air here is alive with the constant, papery rustle of the interdepartmental memos that swoop and dive through the air like a flock of frantic, rectangular birds. You have to duck as a pale, violet memo, folded into the shape of a dart, zips past your ear with a faint, whistling sound. Your tour guide, a cheerful, slightly frazzled-looking wizard named Perkins, meets you by the lifts. He's already explained that these are no ordinary elevators. There are no buttons to push, no floors to select. The lifts, much like the rest of the ministry, operate on a system of controlled chaos and unspoken intent. With a loud, rattling clang, one of the wrought iron grills slides open, revealing a large, wood-paneled lift car. Perkins ushers you inside just as a new flurry of memos swoops in through the open door, circling the interior of the car before shooting off down the lift shaft into the depths below. You are immediately crushed against the back wall by a new wave of passengers. The door clangs shut, and the space feels impossibly small and crowded. You're squashed between a portly wizard who smells strongly of dragon hide, and a very small, very old goblin who is clutching a battered leather briefcase to his chest as if it contains the secrets of the universe. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool, old parchment, and the faint coppery smell of goblin gold. More memos flutter around your heads, their pastel colors a strange contrast to the dark. Serious robes of the occupants. A pale green one gets tangled in your hair, and you gently brush it away, noticing the spidery script on its surface reads, "Urgent. Update on Gringotts withdrawal quotas. Q3. The lift doesn't rise smoothly. It lurches into motion with a great, shuddering judder that makes everyone sway. It moves sideways for a few feet with a grinding noise, then drops suddenly, your stomach lurching with it. It's a stomach-churning, bone-rattling ride. And yet, none of the regulars seem to notice. They stand, bored and impassive, as if this gut-wrenching mode of transport is the most normal thing in the world. Then the argument starts. It's the witch next to the goblin, a stern-faced woman with a tightly wound bun and spectacles perched on the end of her nose. "I'm telling you, grip hook," she says, her voice sharp and clear above the rattling of the lift. Article 73 of the Wand Regulation Act is perfectly clear. Non-human entities are prohibited from carrying a wand. It's been the law for 3 centuries. The goblin, Grip Hook, looks up at her, his dark eyes glittering with ancient indignation. "And I am telling you, Madam Umbridge," he retorts, his voice a low, gravelly rasp, "that your so-called law is nothing more than a thinly veiled instrument of species-based oppression. The craftsmanship of goblins far exceeds that of your clumsy human wand makers. To deny us the right to wield our own creations is an affront of the highest order." Your eyes widen. You are caught in the crossfire of a centuries-old political debate in a rattling metal box, hundreds of feet beneath London. The wizard on your other side lets out a long, weary sigh and pulls his hat down slightly over his eyes, trying to pretend he isn't there. Your visitor badge begins to glow with a faint, anxious yellow light. "It is a matter of security," the witch, Umbridge, insists, her voice rising. "To allow goblins access to wanded magic would be to destabilize the very foundations of our society." A few of the memos, seemingly agitated by her tone, begin to circle her head at an increased speed. "Your society is built on a foundation of stolen goblin gold and disenfranchised house elves," Griphook snaps back. Do not lecture me on stability. The lift gives another violent lurch, this time to the left, and comes to a clanging, shuddering halt. The grille slides open, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with imposing oak doors. Level 4, a disembodied voice announces. Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Griphook gives Umbridge a final, withering glare. This conversation is not over, he growls before stepping out of the lift, his briefcase held tightly. Umbridge sniffs dismissively, straightens her robes, and stares fixedly at the opposite wall. The tension in the lift remains, thick and uncomfortable. Perkins, your guide, leans in and whispers. That happens about 3 times a week. We're headed for level 2. Much more exciting. Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Try to look serious. The grille clangs shut again. The lift drops, rattles, and shudders its way further down into the earth. The flying memos continue their frantic, silent dance around your head. Each one a tiny, urgent secret on its way to a new destination. You are beginning to understand that the Ministry of Magic is not just a place of grand halls and golden statues. It's a place of cramped lifts, ancient arguments, and a deep, abiding, and utterly chaotic bureaucracy. The lift finally groans to a halt at level 2, and the disembodied voice announces, Department of Magical Law Enforcement. The gilded grille slides open to reveal a scene of organized, high-stress chaos that is a world away from the stately grandeur of the atrium. The air here feels different, charged, tense, and smelling of strong, stewed tea and something faintly metallic, like the tang of recently cast spells. Perkins leads you out of the lift and into the heart of the department. You find yourself in a vast, open-plan office, a sprawling labyrinth of wooden cubicles that stretches as far as the eye can see. There are no windows. The only light comes from harsh, magical lamps that hang from the low ceiling, casting a sterile, greenish glow over everything and everyone. The noise is a constant, low-level din, the frantic scratching of quills on parchment, the incessant ringing of internal messaging bells, the murmur of 100 urgent, hushed conversations, and the occasional, unexplained bang from a distant corner of the room. This is the engine room of wizarding justice, and it looks less like a powerful law enforcement agency and more like a deeply stressed and underfunded newspaper office. Wizards and witches rush back and forth, their robes flying behind them, their faces set in masks of grim concentration. Wanted posters are stuck to the walls of the cubicles, featuring grainy, moving photographs of snarling dark wizards and witches. One poster for a witch with a particularly nasty-looking scar keeps winking at you as you pass. Perkins leads you down a central aisle, pointing out various points of interest in a low, respectful whisper. "That's the Auror office over there," he says, gesturing to a section of cubicles that seems even more chaotic than the rest. The front line in the fight against the dark arts. You see a group of aurors huddled around a large, enchanted map of the British Isles, on which tiny red lights are flashing ominously. They look tired, serious, and formidable. One of them, a tall witch with a jagged scar across her cheek, catches your eye for a moment, and her gaze is so intense, so penetrating, that you have to look away, your visitor badge flickering with a nervous, pale blue light. As you walk, you get snippets of the daily grind of magical law enforcement. From one cubicle, you hear a loud, exasperated voice shouting, "For the last time, Aberforth, you cannot file a report on a suspicious-looking garden gnome. Gnomes are not a matter for the improper use of magic office unless they are actively wielding dark artifacts." From another, a tired-looking wizard is speaking into a strange, shell-like device. "No, madam, we cannot arrest your neighbor for brewing a love potion. It is only illegal if she actually administers it to someone without their consent. Yes, I understand he is very handsome, but that is not a crime. No, being too charming is also not a crime. The mundanity of it all is a stark contrast to the serious life or death image you've always had of this department. These powerful wizards are dealing with the magical equivalent of noise complaints and petty neighborhood disputes. Then, things take a turn. As you pass a row of desks piled high with what look like confiscated items, a shouting match erupts. "I told you not to plug it in! Williamson!" a witch screeches, pointing a trembling finger at a wizard who is backing away from a small, floral-patterned tea kettle that is beginning to wobble violently on his desk. "I thought it was just a normal kettle," Williamson protests, his face pale. "How was I to know it was a key part of the Blackwood curse investigation?" "Because it had a tag on it that said, 'Cursed kettle, do not touch,'" the witch shrieks. The kettle begins to emit a high-pitched whistling sound, and a jet of purple steam shoots from its spout. Perkins grabs your arm. "Time to move along, I think," he says, his cheerful demeanor strained. He tries to steer you away, but you are frozen, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of terror and fascination. The kettle levitates a few inches off the desk, spinning faster and faster. "Everyone, take cover," someone yells. You duck behind a large filing cabinet just as the kettle explodes. There is a deafening bang, a flash of brilliant blue light, and a shower of what feels like warm, strawberry-flavored jam rains down over the surrounding cubicles. When you peek out from behind your hiding place, the desk is gone, replaced by a smoking, blackened crater in the floor. Williamson is covered head to toe in the sticky pink jam, and his hair is standing on end, emitting faint blue sparks. A weary-looking wizard from a nearby cubicle, who somehow managed to avoid the blast, slowly lowers the copy of the Daily Prophet he was reading. He takes a long, slow sip from his teacup, surveys the jam-covered chaos, and mutters to no one in particular, "Just another Monday." A team of wizards from the magical reversal squad appears moments later, their wands out, already casting complex spells to contain the fallout and repair the damage. Perkins, looking deeply flustered, pulls you away from the scene. "Right," he says, adjusting his robes and trying to regain his composure. "That's not a regular occurrence, I promise. Usually, things only explode on Tuesdays. Now, where were we? Yes. Next up, a quick look at the Department of Mysteries. Though, from a safe distance, of course. A very, very safe distance. He gives a nervous laugh and hurries you down another corridor, leaving the sounds of frantic cleaning charms and Williamson's jam-filled sputtering behind you. After the chaos of the exploding kettle, Perkins seems determined to steer you toward a quieter, less jam-covered part of the ministry. He leads you down several more shuddering, rattling lift rides, each one descending deeper into the earth until you reach the lowest level on your itinerary, level 9. The moment the gilded lift grille opens, you know this place is different. The air is still and cold, a stark contrast to the buzzing, tea-scented chaos of the levels above. The usual noise of the ministry, the rustling memos, the echoing footsteps, the distant shouts, is completely absent here. There is only a profound, unnerving silence. The corridor before you is not lined with oak doors and nameplates. It is a long, circular hallway with walls of smooth, unbroken black stone that seem to absorb the light from the few flickering torches. There are no windows, no decorations, and no people. It feels less like a part of the ministry and more like a tomb. The Department of Mysteries, Perkins whispers, and his voice, usually so cheerful, is now hushed and reverent. As the name suggests, what they do down here is, well, it's a mystery. He gives a weak, nervous laugh that is quickly swallowed by the oppressive silence. He gestures to a single, plain black door set into the curved wall. It has no handle, no keyhole, no markings of any kind, except for a small, sternly worded sign that reads, "Authorized personnel only. No admittance." Now, the most important thing to remember, Perkins continues, his eyes wide and serious, is that we do not, under any circumstances, go anywhere near that door. We don't touch it. We don't talk to it. We don't even think too hard about what might be behind it. The people who work here, they're called unspeakables for a reason. Very secretive, very powerful, best not to attract their attention. You nod, your throat suddenly dry. The silence and the starkness of the corridor are beginning to crawl under your skin. Your visitor badge has turned a cool, cautious shade of gray. You can feel the magic in this place. It's not the busy, functional magic of the atrium or the volatile, chaotic magic of law enforcement. This is something else. It's an ancient, deep, and profoundly complex magic that seems to hum in the very stones. A low-frequency thrum that you feel in your teeth. As Perkins is explaining the theoretical functions of the department, studying the deepest mysteries of existence, such as time, space, love, and death, the impossible happens. The plain black door, the one you were warned so explicitly to avoid, clicks open. A crack of darkness appears. A figure steps out. A tall, imposing wizard robed entirely in black, their face completely obscured by a deep, shadowy hood. An unspeakable. The figure doesn't even glance at you. They turn and stride down the circular corridor, their footsteps making no sound at all on the stone floor, before disappearing around a bend. But they've left the door slightly ajar. A thin, vertical slice of the room beyond is visible. Perkins freezes, his face a mask of pure terror. "Don't look," he mouths at you, his eyes wide with panic. But it's like telling someone not to think about a pink elephant. It's impossible. Your curiosity, a powerful force, even on a normal day, overwhelms your fear. You can't help but steal a glance. It is a glimpse that lasts no more than 2 seconds. But the images are burned into your mind with searing, incomprehensible clarity. You see not one room, but a dizzying, overlapping collage of many. You see a wall of what look like glass spheres, each containing a tiny, swirling, pearlescent galaxy. Prophecies. You realize with a jolt, you see a vast, dark chamber where colossal models of planets and moons float in silent, graceful orbits. For a fraction of a second, you see an archway with a tattered, black veil that seems to whisper your name, a sound that comes from no mouth and echoes directly in your soul. The room itself seems to be spinning, the walls shifting and reconfiguring, making it impossible to get your bearings. And then there are the sounds, a jumble of sensory input that makes no sense. You hear the faint, high-pitched ringing of 1,000 tiny bells, a sound you somehow associate with shattered glass and cascading sand. You hear the disembodied whispers, voices speaking in riddles and forgotten languages, seeming to emanate from the very air. You feel a pull, a strange temporal distortion, as if time itself is stretching and compressing around the doorway. Your visitor badge flashes wildly, cycling through a frantic kaleidoscope of colors. Confused purple, terrified red, curious green, staticky gray, before settling on a deep, solid black, as if it has overloaded and simply given up. The glimpse ends as abruptly as it began, with a soft click. The black door swings shut of its own accord, sealing the madness away once more. You are left standing in the silent, black corridor, your heart hammering against your ribs, your mind reeling. What did you just see? Perkins looks as if he's about to faint. Right, he says, his voice a squeak. Tour of Level 9 concluded. Excellent. Thorough? Time for lunch? He practically runs back to the lift, and you have no choice but to hurry after him. The sound of 1,000 tiny, ringing bells still echoing in your memory. After the bone-chilling silence of the Department of Mysteries, the chaotic, noisy warmth of the Ministry canteen is a welcome, if slightly bewildering, relief. The lift, to your immense gratitude, deposits you in a much more normal-looking corridor on Level 6. Perkins. who has regained some of his color, but still looks shaken, leads you into a large, bustling hall filled with the clatter of cutlery and the loud murmur of hundreds of conversations. It's lunchtime, and it seems every wizard, witch, and goblin in the building has descended upon this place at once. The canteen is a study in magical practicality. It's a vast, low-ceilinged room filled with long, functional tables and benches, much like the Great Hall at Hogwarts, but without any of the grandeur. There are no enchanted ceilings or floating candles here. The only decoration is the steam rising from tureens of stew and the occasional rogue memo that has lost its way and is now fluttering sadly around the light fixtures. Perkins guides you to a serving line where, instead of choosing your food, you simply hold out a plate, and a magically replenishing ladle dumps a hearty-looking portion of stew onto it, followed by a chunk of crusty bread. You find a spot at the end of a long, crowded table, squashed between a witch who is diligently reading a report on dragon pox outbreaks, and a wizard who is trying to surreptitiously mend a tear in his robes under the table with his wand. The most peculiar feature of the room is the window. It's a large, arched window that takes up most of the far wall, but it doesn't look out onto the London street or a magical landscape. It looks out onto nothing, a blank, shifting, gray mist, like the inside of a cloud. Every now and then, a shape will seem to form in the mist. A tree, a building, a face, before dissolving back into formless gray. Budget cuts, Perkins explains, following your gaze. Used to be a view of the Swiss Alps. Now it's just enchanted static, cheaper to maintain. You take a bite of your stew. The flavor is rich and beefy, perfectly pleasant. You take another bite, and your eyebrows shoot up. The flavor has completely changed. It's now a tangy, spicy chicken and mushroom. You stare at your spoon in bewilderment. Oh, don't mind that, Perkins says, noticing your expression. That's just the unstable stew. It's Monday's special. Never know what you're going to get. Keeps things interesting. Your visitor badge, which had settled back to a neutral beige, now flickers with a curious, light green shimmer. You eat your reality-bending lunch and listen to the conversations swirling around you. It's a fascinating, dizzying insight into the daily lives of these people. Behind you, two wizards are having a very serious discussion about dragons. I'm telling you, Cornelius, the Norwegian ridgeback, is far too aggressive for domestic breeding, one says, waving a fork for emphasis. You want a Hebridean black, much more even-tempered. and their Myra's better for toasting marshmallows. To your right, a group of young witches are gossiping. And then he had the audacity to send me a howler during the department meeting. Can you imagine? So unprofessional. I turned it into a teacup before it could get to the shouting part. The extraordinary is mundane here. Cursed artifacts, dragon breeding, sentient memos. It's all just part of a day's work. You feel like an anthropologist who has stumbled upon a completely alien civilization. You are surrounded by a culture where exploding kettles are a weekly annoyance, and stew that defies the laws of physics is a lunch special. A wizard walks past your table, his robes smoking slightly at the hem. No one pays him any mind. A memo folded into the shape of a tiny, flapping bat lands in your stew, and you fish it out before it dissolves. The witch beside you finishes her report, rolls it up, ties it to the leg of a paper crane, and sends it flying off towards the ceiling. You finish your multi-flavored stew and your perpetually warm bread, your head spinning with the sheer, overwhelming strangeness of it all. Lunch at the Ministry of Magic, you conclude, is not a relaxing affair. It's just another piece of the chaotic, bureaucratic, and utterly baffling puzzle. As Perkins stands up and announces your next stop, a quick tour of the misuse of Muggle artifacts office, you have a feeling the day is only going to get weirder. After the bewildering experience of the unstable stew, you're feeling a desperate need for something normal, something predictable, a lavatory, for instance. You politely excuse yourself, and Perkins, who is busy trying to disentangle a stubborn memo from his ear, waves you off with a vague gesture. Down the hall, third door on the left, he calls out distractedly. Can't miss it. Famous last words in a place like the Ministry. You navigate the crowded canteen and step out into a corridor that looks identical to a dozen others you've seen today. Long, dimly lit, and lined with unassuming wooden doors. You count them off. 1, 2, 3. The third door is slightly ajar. The sign on it is partially obscured by a notice about upcoming flu network maintenance, but you can make out the words facilities and restricted. You assume facilities is the operative word and push the door open. The room you enter is most definitely not a lavatory. It's a small, impossibly cluttered office that looks like a Muggle charity shop exploded. Every available surface is buried under a mountain of mundane, non-magical items. Shelves sag under the weight of rubber ducks of all shapes and sizes. Filing cabinets are stuffed not with files, but with confiscated yo-yos and novelty ties. A large cardboard box in one corner overflows with plastic pink flamingos, while another is filled with singing fish plaques that are all humming a discordant, off-key tune. The air smells strongly of ozone, burnt toast, and dust. A harried-looking wizard with a magnificent, walrus-like mustache is sitting at a desk in the center of the chaos. He's leaning forward, speaking in a low, intense voice to the object on his desk. A gleaming chrome toaster. "Now, let's go over this one more time," the wizard says, his voice firm but patient, as if addressing a particularly difficult witness. "You were found in a Muggle home in Surrey. You were toasting bread, which is perfectly acceptable. But then, and this is the important part, you began toasting threatening limericks onto the bread. Do you deny this?" The toaster remains silent, its chrome surface gleaming under the harsh office light. "Stubborn one, eh?" the wizard mutters. He pulls out his wand and taps the toaster sharply. "I must warn you, we have ways of making you pop." You stand frozen in the doorway, utterly bewildered. This has to be the misuse of Muggle Artifacts office. Before you can back out quietly, the wizard looks up and spots you. His eyes light up with a friendly, slightly manic glee. "Ah, a visitor. Perkins show you in? Wonderful. Come, come, have a look at this beauty." He gestures proudly at the toaster. "We suspect an illegal animation charm coupled with a fairly sophisticated engorgement charm for the lettering. Nasty bit of work. But don't you just admire the craftsmanship of the Muggle casing? So simple, so elegant." He seems so genuinely delighted by your presence that you can't bring yourself to admit you're lost. You take a tentative step into the room, trying not to trip over a pile of garden gnomes that are all staring at you with unnervingly blank expressions. Your visitor badge begins to glow a bright, curious orange. As you get closer, the toaster on the desk seems to sense you. It gives a sudden, aggressive hop. Its two slots snap open and shut with a sharp clack, 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 like a set of metallic jaws. You instinctively take a step back. "Whoa, there," the wizard says, patting the top of the toaster. "Down, boy. Behave for our guest." The toaster ignores him. It gives another, more powerful hop, tumbling off the desk and landing on the floor with a clatter. It then begins to advance on you, its metal body skittering across the floor. the slots continuing their menacing snapping. It's the most absurdly terrifying thing you have ever seen. You back away, your heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hysterical laughter. It lunges, not for your ankle, as you expect, but for your shoe. The edge of one of its slots clamps down firmly on the tip of your shoelace. You are now tethered to a mildly aggressive, possibly sentient breakfast appliance. "Oh, for goodness sake," the wizard exclaims, scrambling around his desk. He points his wand at the toaster. "Immobulus!" The toaster freezes mid-snap, its metal body humming with restrained energy. The wizard sighs and manually pries the slot open, freeing your shoelace. "My apologies," he says, looking genuinely embarrassed. He gets a bit nippy when he's being interrogated. He's not a fan of authority. He picks up the now frozen toaster and places it back on his desk next to a row of rubber ducks that seem to be watching the proceedings with great interest. Just then, the door flies open and Perkins rushes in, his face a mask of panic. "There you are. I am so sorry." The sign for the lavatory fell down again. "Arthur, have your artifacts been harassing ministry guests?" "Just a bit of professional curiosity." "Perkins?" "The wizard?" "Arthur?" says Oak cheerfully. "No harm done. We were just discussing the finer points of Muggle ingenuity." Perkins grabs your arm and pulls you out of the office, shutting the door firmly behind you. "My deepest apologies," he says, his voice shaky. "That department is enthusiastic. The lavatory is actually the fourth door on the left. Let's just move on, shall we? I think you'll find the Department of Magical Transportation much more stable." As he leads you away, you can hear Arthur's voice faintly through the door. "Now, where were we?" Yes. The limericks. Determined to get the tour back onto a respectable, less hazardous track, Perkins practically marches you to your next official destination. After the near miss with the homicidal toaster, you are more than happy to be guided. He leads you to a different wing on the same level, and the atmosphere changes yet again. The cluttered, chaotic feel of the misuse of Muggle artifacts office is replaced by something that feels more like a cross between a bustling train station and an inventor's workshop. This is the Department of Magical Transportation, the nervous system that keeps the entire British wizarding community moving. The vast, open room is dominated by a colossal, wall-sized map of Great Britain and Ireland. It's not a static map. It's a living, breathing entity. Thousands of tiny, pinprick lights flicker across its surface. each one representing a fireplace connected to the flue network. Most of the lights are a steady, healthy green, but every so often, one will flicker to yellow, or even a worrying shade of red, and a team of soot-covered wizards in a corner will spring into action, shouting things like, "We have a blockage in Bath." Someone's tried to send a grandfather clock through a non-regulation flue. Or, "Logjam in Liverpool. Get me the high-pressure soot-loosening squad, now!" They pore over charts and diagrams, their faces smudged with soot, arguing about chimney diagnostics and the optimal, magical fuel-to-air ratio. It's a messy, high-stakes, and surprisingly greasy operation. Perkins gestures proudly. The flue network regulators, the unsung heroes of magical Britain. Without them, we'd all be stuck taking the night bus. He then leads you to a quieter, more studious section of the department. Here, somber-looking witches and wizards are bent over desks, not with teetering piles of parchment, but with meticulously detailed reports and enchanted diagrams. The apparition, Licensing and Regulation Division, Perkins whispers. A much more serious business. You see what he means? The mood here is grim. A young witch is carefully examining a report that has a moving diagram attached, showing a wizard who has successfully apparated from one spot to another, but has unfortunately left his left ear behind. The diagram helpfully circles the abandoned ear, which is still twitching slightly. Another case of insufficient determination, the witch mutters to her colleague, who nods grimly. That's the third splinching incident this week, all in the same public fountain in Muggle London. We're going to have to put up stronger memory-modifying wards around it. You feel a little sick, seeing the stark, bureaucratic reality of splinching, the forms, the diagrams, the weary sighs, is far more chilling than just hearing about it. In a corner of the room, you see a designated apparition practice area, a small, padded square on the floor. A terrified-looking teenage wizard is standing in the center, sweating profusely, while an examiner reads from a clipboard. "Now, Mr. Frobisher," the examiner says calmly, "I want you to visualize your destination. Feel it. Focus on the 3 Ds: destination, determination, and deliberation on the count of 3. 1, 2, with a deafening crack. The young wizard vanishes, only to reappear a moment later 2 feet to his left, looking extremely nauseous and pale. He's whole. At least. A bit of a wobble on the re-entry. Frobisher, the examiner notes dryly. But no splinching. We'll call that a pass. Barely. The most exciting part of the department, however, is the prototype section. This is where new, experimental modes of magical transport are developed and tested. And it's a chaotic jumble of half-finished projects and wildly ambitious contraptions. Your eyes are immediately drawn to the centerpiece, the broom-powered elevator. It's a large, round, wicker basket, big enough for 3 people, suspended from the ceiling by a complex series of ropes and pulleys. Attached to the underside of the basket are a dozen mismatched broomsticks, all pointing downwards. They twitch and vibrate, clearly enchanted and eager to fly. The BEA, Perkins says with a grin. That's the broom-powered elevator and ascending stair substitute technology, still in the early stages, as you can see. As if on cue, a brave-looking wizard in a leather helmet climbs into the basket. "All right, Bartholomew," a witch calls out from a control panel covered in levers and dials. "Initiating low-altitude stability test. Hold on tight." She pulls a large, brass lever. The 12 brooms under the basket roar to life. Not with the sound of a normal broom, but with the combined, deafening noise of a dozen angry hornets trapped in a tin can. The wicker basket shudders violently and then lifts a few feet into the air, wobbling precariously. The test pilot's face has gone from brave to terrified in a matter of seconds. The entire contraption drifts slowly to the right, bumps into a filing cabinet, and then drops back to the floor with a jarring thump. The brooms sputter and die. The witch at the control panel says, scribbling furiously on her clipboard. Slight lateral drift and uncontrolled descent, but the structural integrity of the basket remains intact. I'm calling that a success. You stare at the contraption, your mind reeling. This is how new magic is made, through trial and error, through ridiculous, dangerous, and brilliantly insane experiments. You feel a new respect for the wizards and witches who work here, the ones who regulate the chaos, and the ones who create it. They are the plumbers, the mechanics, and the mad scientists who keep the magical world running. As Perkins steers you away before they can attempt a high-altitude test, your visitor badge glows a bright, fascinated green. The earlier anxieties of the day momentarily forgotten in the face of pure, unadulterated, magical ingenuity. As your tour winds down, Perkins seems to feel a twinge of guilt about the exploding kettles and homicidal toasters. The ministry isn't all chaos and malfunctioning Muggle artifacts. You know, he says, his tone becoming more serious. There's a graver side to it. The Wizengamot, the highest court in the wizarding world. We're not supposed to go there on the visitor's tour, but he glances around the corridor, then lowers his voice. Come on, just a quick peek, so you can see the whole picture. A thrill of nervous excitement shoots through you, overriding your common sense. This feels forbidden. A secret look behind the final, most imposing curtain of the ministry. He leads you away from the bustling main corridors and into a part of the building you haven't seen before. The further you go, the colder and quieter it gets. The light from the magical torches seems dimmer here. The walls are made of a darker, more forbidding stone, and the air feels heavy, thick with the weight of centuries of judgment. Your visitor badge shifts to a sober, deep purple. You arrive at a set of enormous black doors, heavily reinforced with iron. Unlike the other doors in the ministry, this one has no signs, no numbers, no nameplates. It needs none. You know instinctively where you are. The Wizengamot courtrooms, Perkins whispers, his voice barely audible. They've been down here since the ministry was founded. They say the stones themselves have absorbed the echoes of every verdict ever passed. He points to a smaller, unassuming door to the side. Courtroom 10. The name sends a shiver down your spine. You've read about it in history books, the site of infamous trials, of dark wizards condemned, of justice served in its most severe form. Perkins tiptoes over to the door and presses his ear against the heavy wood. He listens for a moment, then beckons you over. The door is not quite shut. A thin, vertical crack, no wider than your finger, offers a sliver of a view inside. Looks like a hearing is in session, he whispers. Just a glimpse. Don't make a sound. You press your eye to the crack, and your breath catches in your throat. The world outside the door vanishes. You are looking down into a cavernous, circular chamber, a stone amphitheater of justice. The walls are dark, damp stone, and the only light comes from torches set in brackets, which cast long, flickering shadows that dance like accusing spirits. The public galleries are empty, but the tiered benches below are filled with dozens of wizards and witches, all robed in magnificent, plum-colored robes embroidered with a silver doubleau. The Wizengamot. They are a sea of stern, impassive faces, looking down from on high, their expressions unreadable in the gloom. In the very center of the circular floor, a single, high-backed chair stands alone. It is not empty. A man is sitting there, his face pale and slick with sweat in the torchlight. His own robes are drab and colorless, heavy. Enchanted chains are wrapped around the arms of the chair, glowing with a faint, malevolent blue light, though they don't seem to be physically touching him. He looks small and utterly powerless, a single, terrified soul being shushkad in the balance by the assembled might of the wizarding world. A voice, cold and booming, echoes through the chamber, seemingly coming from all directions at once. It's one of the Wizengamot members, though you can't tell which one. You claim it was an accident, an unintended magical surge, and yet 3 witnesses testify that you raised your wand and uttered the incantation for the memory-modifying charm with clear and deliberate intent. How do you explain this discrepancy? The man in the chair flinches, as if struck. He licks his dry lips. I was angry, he stammers, his voice thin and reedy, a pathetic sound in the vast, echoing chamber. He was blackmailing me. I just wanted him to forget. I didn't mean for it to go wrong. I didn't mean to wipe his entire personality. The clinking of the magical chains is the only sound that follows his desperate plea. It's a soft, chilling sound, a constant reminder of his captivity. You feel a wave of cold dread wash over you. This isn't like the arguments in the lift or the shouting in the Auror office. This is real. This is the stark, terrifying power of the law made manifest. There is no chaos here, no humor, no unstable stew. There is only cold, hard judgment. It is, you realize, both thrilling in its awesome power and terrifying in its absolute finality. This is the iron fist inside the ministry's chaotic, bureaucratic velvet glove. Suddenly, one of the figures on the benches, a witch with a severe top knot of gray hair, turns her head slightly, as if she has sensed your presence. Her eyes, even from this distance, seem to pierce right through the tiny crack in the door, right through to your soul. Her expression is one of pure, icy disapproval. Perkins yanks you back from the door so quickly you stumble. His face is pale. "She saw us," he hisses, "or felt us. Some of them can do that. Time to go. Now." He doesn't wait for a reply, simply grabs your arm and half drags you back down the silent, stone corridor, away from the echoing voices and the clinking chains. The weight of what you've seen settles on you, a cold, heavy stone in your stomach. The Ministry of Magic is a place of wonders and chaos, but it is also a place of terrible, awe-inspiring power, and you have just stared into its heart. Just as the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of the courtroom level begins to lift, and your heart rate returns to something resembling normal. It happens. Perkins is in the middle of a nervous, rambling apology, strictly off the books. That last bit, highly irregular. Please don't mention it in your visitor feedback report. When the entire corridor is plunged into a terrifying, flashing red light. The magical torches on the walls flare up, their usual warm glow replaced by a pulsating, crimson glare that paints the stone walls in strobes of blood and shadow. Simultaneously, a klaxon begins to blare, a loud, jarring, two-tone alarm that is 1,000 times more frightening than the exploding kettle. It's a sound designed for pure, undiluted panic. In the atrium, the flying memos had been a constant, gentle rustle. Here, in this sealed corridor, they react instantly to the alarm. Every single memo in the air freezes for a half-second and then drops to the floor like a flock of birds shaita from the sky, littering the stone with silent, useless paper. The whole nervous system of the ministry has just flatlined. Then, the calm, cool female voice from the telephone booth fills the air, magically amplified and utterly devoid of emotion. Security alert. Level 4. Unauthorized spell work detected in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. This is not a drill. Please proceed to the nearest designated safe alcove immediately. Your blood runs cold. Unauthorized spell work. Level 4. That was the floor where the goblin, Grip Hook, had gotten off. His argument with the Umbridge woman still simmering. Your mind races with terrible possibilities. But before you can properly panic, you witness another uniquely ministry phenomenon. The practiced, almost bored efficiency of its employees in a crisis. There is no screaming, no running. The handful of other wizards in the corridor with you let out a collective, weary groan, as if they've just been told the canteen is out of sugar. One wizard sighs, carefully places a bookmark in his report, and tucks it into his robes. Another witch, who had been power-walking down the hall, simply stops, rolls her eyes, and mutters, "Oh, for Merlin's sake. Not again. I'm going to be late for my meeting with the Centaur Liaison Office. As they complain, sections of the solid stone wall slide inwards with a low grinding sound, revealing small, brightly lit, cuboid alcoves. Perkins, now in full-on panic mode, grabs your arm with surprising strength. "In here, quickly," he yelps, shoving you towards the nearest opening. You stumble inside, followed by Perkins and the eye-rolling witch, with a deep, final-sounding thump. A heavy stone door slides across the opening, sealing you in. The klaxon is muffled now, a dull, throbbing beat that you can feel in your chest. The flashing red light is gone, replaced by the steady, white glow of a single, bare, magical light orb on the ceiling of the alcove. The space is small and bare, made of the same cold, gray stone as the corridor. The witch leans against the wall, pulls a half-finished sock and a pair of knitting needles from a pocket in her robes, and begins to knit with an air of profound resignation. "It's always level 4, she says to no one in particular, her needles clicking away rhythmically. "Honestly, you'd think they'd learn. Give a goblin a cursed artifact to catalog, and what do you expect is going to happen?" Perkins is wringing his hands, his face pale. "It could be anything. A rogue manticore, an escaped chimera." The witch doesn't even look up from her knitting. "It's never a chimera, Perkins. It's always some idiot who's tried to feed a fanged frisbee to a flobberworm. You know how they get when they're teething." You stand there, squashed between a panicking tour guide and a serenely knitting bureaucrat, listening to the muffled alarm. This juxtaposition of mortal peril and utter mundanity is perhaps the most confusing thing you've experienced all day. Your visitor badge is flashing a frantic, pulsing red, a stark contrast to the calm beige of the knitting witch's own ID. Through a small, barred grille in the stone door, you can see the corridor outside, still strobing with red light. Suddenly, there's a flash of brilliant green light from further down the hall, followed by a loud, muffled bang, and the distinct sound of something squealing. Then, silence. The klaxon cuts off mid-blare. The red lights stop flashing, plunging the corridor back into its usual dim torchlight. A moment later, the calm female voice returns, as if nothing has happened. "All clear. Threat neutralized. We apologize for any inconvenience to your workday. Have a productive afternoon." The stone door slides open as silently as it closed. The knitting witch calmly finishes her row, tucks her sock and needles away, and steps out into the corridor. Right. Then off to see the centaurs, she says, striding away without a backward glance. You and Perkins step out tentatively. The corridor is empty, except for the blanket of dead memos on the floor. A moment later, a team of 3 aurors strides past, looking more bored than heroic. One of them is levitating a small, ornate, and furiously snapping wooden box. Some idiot from the ghoul task force brought back a souvenir from a raid. One of the aurors is saying to another, with a sigh, "Thought it was a music box. Turned out to be a biting toolbox from Ireland." Perkins lets out a long, shaky breath and forces a wobbly smile. "Well," he says, his voice unnaturally high, "a live-action demonstration of our excellent security protocols. Perfect timing. Consider it a bonus feature of the tour." He gives a hysterical little laugh, pats his robes down, and tries to regain some semblance of dignity. "Now, I believe our time is almost up. Just need to get you back to the atrium without any further unscheduled demonstrations." The final lift ride back to the atrium is a quiet, contemplative affair. The bone-rattling lurches and sideways shudders feel familiar now, almost comforting after the day's chaotic events. The lift is less crowded, filled with weary-looking ministry workers whose earlier urgency has been replaced by a bone-deep, end-of-the-day exhaustion. Their faces are slack, their shoulders slumped. A young wizard leans his head against the wood-paneled wall, his eyes closed. The memos that flutter around the lift car seem less frantic, their flight paths slower and more languid, as if they too are ready to rest. The lift doors open onto the atrium, and you step out into a world transformed. The grand, intimidating hall of the morning is now a place of soft, golden light and long, stretching shadows. The crowds have thinned to a mere trickle of people heading for the fireplaces. The roar of the flu network has subsided to a gentle, intermittent whoosh. The great fountain still burbles, but its golden light seems warmer, more mellow, less a display of power and more a welcoming hearth. The entire ministry seems to be breathing a collective sigh of relief. The great, complex beast of bureaucracy settling down for the night. Perkins walks you back towards the visitor's entrance, his own cheerful energy finally depleted. "Well, there you have it," he says, his voice tired, but content. One full day at the Ministry of Magic. You've seen the good, the bad, and the, frankly, deeply classified. He gives you a sideways glance, a silent reminder of your shared, forbidden peek into the courtroom. My advice? When you write your report, focus on the broom-powered elevator. They love hearing about the broom-powered elevator. You arrive back at the bank of telephone boxes. One of them stands open. Its interior dark and waiting. It looks so impossibly mundane, so jarringly normal after everything you've seen. It's a portal back to a world without flying memos or biting toolboxes. You turn to thank Perkins for the eventful tour. He just smiles wearily. All part of the service, he says. Just remember, what happens in the ministry stays in the ministry, especially the bits that explode. You step into the telephone box. The heavy door swings shut, and the world goes silent once more. You pick up the receiver. There's no voice this time, only a soft click and the low hum of ascending magic. The box begins to rise, smoothly and silently. You watch through the glass as the golden light of the atrium recedes below you, shrinking until it's just a tiny, distant star. You pass through the layers of rock and pipe, the history of London spooling backwards around you. Then, with a gentle bump, you stop. Sunlight, gray and watery, filters through the glass. The door swings open, and you are hit by the cacophony of the city, the roar of a double-decker bus, the impatient beeping of a car horn, the scent of rain on hot asphalt. It's all overwhelming, a sensory assault after the clean, contained world of the ministry. You step out onto the pavement, and as your foot touches the damp concrete, you feel a faint, warm sensation on your chest. You look down, your laminated visitor ID badge, with its unflattering picture and its mood monitoring background, dissolves into a fine, shimmering dust that is instantly whisked away by the city breeze. It vanishes as if it was never there. You are no longer a visitor. You are just another person on a busy London street. You stand there for a moment, disoriented. The world looks wrong. The buildings seem too plain. Their straight lines and uniform brickwork, a pale imitation of the chaotic, magical architecture you just left. The people rushing past seem blissfully unaware of the vast, complex, and utterly mad world humming away just a few hundred feet beneath their feet. Your head is a whirlwind of conflicting images and sensations. The solemn, echoing chamber of the courtroom, the scent of burnt toast and ozone in Arthur's office, the furious glitter in a goblin's eye, the terrifying, beautiful, incomprehensible glimpse into the department of mysteries, the whispers from the veil, the ringing of the time-turners. Those memories are the sharpest, the ones that make the hairs on your arms stand on end even now, in the mundane light of day. You thought this visit would provide answers, that it would demystify the great, powerful ministry of magic. But you were wrong. You've left with more questions than you arrived with. What really happens in the Department of Mysteries? What other cursed artifacts are locked away in the ministry's bowels? What other ancient feuds and modern marvels are playing out in those endless, chaotic corridors? You have seen the system up close, its power and its absurdity, its grandeur and its mundanity, its moments of profound gravity and its moments of pure, unadulterated slapstick. It is a place of heroes and bureaucrats, of dreamers and judges. And you know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that one day was not nearly enough. You turn away from the telephone box, blending back into the anonymous city crowd, your mind still spinning, still reaching for the impossible, wonderful, terrifying world that lies just beneath the surface.